So Republicans ran on repeal and replace. This is their first budget, and they can't defund Obamacare. What is going on in Washington, D.C.?
Well, and when we look at the polling numbers, repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act is getting less and less popular. According to a new poll, barely 1 out of 3 Americans support repealing and replacing. So now you have this idea that President Trump was not all that sold on this bill to begin with. Now as negotiations kind of press on to resurrect it, as much as the president is saying that he would like to go forward with this, and as much as Congress is saying that, Republicans in Congress are saying that, it's not something that's that popular. So it's going to get that much more difficult, I think, to push this through.
So it's sort of like two camps, right? There are some people who were sent to Washington, the Freedom Caucus among them, that said no matter what, we need to get rid of it. We'll accept nothing but complete replacing or repealing this. And the others are saying, hey, wait a minute, we need something else. So there's sort of like two parties fighting amongst itself. And the voters, I was on Jim Bohannon's show last night, and caller after caller kept saying, we sent these people to Washington to get rid of it. What are they waiting for?
Yeah, and part of these negotiations, of course, is a lot of sort of moderate Republicans saying, well, how can we sort of get rid of the bill in its entirety, but keep some of the provisions that a lot of voters like, but not necessarily have all these overarching federal laws that so many Republicans seem to dislike. You know, a big part of these negotiations has been, what can we potentially farm out to the states? What could we say, you know what, if you're Missouri, you can have this, but if you're New York, you can have that. Well, according to our recent polling that we just put out in the lead up to this 100 days, 70% of Americans want it to be a mandate for all 50 states that you cover pre-existing conditions. 62% of Americans say that those essential health care benefits we were talking about in the lead up to the last bill, ambulance care, maternity care, prescription drug care, that those should all be on your plan and that should be a federal mandate across all 50 states. So as much as Republicans, like you said, argue between the conservative and moderate wings, what to do going forward, there seems to be a lot of Americans that are saying there are certain things we want as federal rules.
What you're talking about in those polling is a single payer system in a sense. So where does this leave Republicans either for this budget argument or going forward?
Well, I think it puts them in a difficult position because at this point, what these polls sort of show is not just a dislike for lawmakers that seem entrenched in their own sides, right? And we certainly see that. There's a lot of people in this poll that say they want President Trump to work with Democrats just as much as they want him to work with conservative Republicans. That's not all that surprising. We always see Americans say everyone should work together. But what we also see is Americans who more and more sort of consider Obamacare just to be part of the healthcare system, to be sort of to be there to stay. And I think that is what Republicans were trying to avoid. That is why President Trump said specifically, we need to get working on this now, so that it doesn't just get seen as sort of a bunch of entitlements that end up, that American voters thinking are here for good. Especially considering President Trump says that Obamacare is going to go into a death spiral. And so the question now is, if he doesn't get this passed, will he sort of keep Obamacare as is? Will he keep funding it, or will he sort of help that death spiral along?
Well, what's interesting is going forward, if Republicans in this budget that whatever gets passed either this week or whenever funds Obamacare, it's going to be very hard for them to go back to their districts and say, I'm for getting rid of it, if their party, which owns every lever of government, continues to fund it.
Yeah, and you've got the Health and Human Services Department right now that is continuing to promote the Affordable Care Act. So even though you've got Tom Price, who basically came into this job saying we're looking to overhaul the Affordable Care Act, if not get rid of it entirely, they're still paying the people that work on the website, right? They're still putting out the advertisements saying sign up this year for your Affordable Care Act coverage. So that in itself is this big sort of conflict. However, if you ask people, should President Trump try to make this law work as long as it's here, or should he try to help it fail? Well, 80% of Americans think he should try to make it work. So there's also going to be a big backlash, you'd think, from the American voter if they see President Trump as pushing their own health care over the brink.
Brad Melke, interesting times we live in. ABC News correspondent. Thanks for checking in, Brad.
Thank you.
725.